Writing a book is very different than marketing one. It can take a long time to settle on the right pitch. If you're like me, these sales-based skills don't come naturally, so I end up second-guessing myself a lot. But good news, there are plenty of ways to stay on track, and I'll share what's helped me. Then I'll walk you through the changes I've made to get ready for another round of agent submissions and talk about author bios. As prior videos demonstrated, a lot of thought has to go into each step of this process. So what's helped keep me on track during these trying times? Last video I mentioned finding inspiration in the afterword of a book I loved, so I think finding ways to connect to the literary community is a great way to find motivation. In that spirit, I attended a webinar hosted by USC. Danzy Senna is a published author who is also a professor of English, and was interviewed by a former student, Jeffrey Escoffrey, who is also an acclaimed author. It was a fascinating conversation, and I'll share a link to it in the description. For someone like me who has not attended an MFA program, it was a wonderful view into what that environment might be like for a writer. Danzy shared a lot about her personal experience as a writer, especially as a biracial one, and also reinforced the need for a writer's group or class. Another key thing Danzy emphasized was setting parameters. And this is something that related to me as well. When you have all the time in the world, it's very hard to sit down and get the work done that you need to. When you have a tough deadline, inspiration can sometimes come much easier. Perhaps this is why a lot of college students wait until the night of to finish their papers, or start it. Another thing Danzy was very passionate about is make sure you have something to say. Foster that impulse to share it. The words are going to come a lot easier if you're compelled to write, rather than trying to meet someone else's expectations. You need to lean into expressing yourself. What's your voice? What makes it important and unique? I found this hour-long conversation between Danzy and Jonathan was very inspirational. It shook up my day a bit and reminded me that I love writing. Marketing? Not as much. This is why many authors encourage you to continue other projects while you're submitting for agents. It makes perfect sense to me. You need that balance. Another thing that helped me stay on track is outsourcing to someone I trust. A friend of mine who is a literary manager was kind enough to take a close look at my query letter. The changes marked in red are suggestions for removal. The ones in blue are additions. I totally agree with his first note, and harvest the trees from its grove is redundant and just not needed. I want this to be as tight as possible. The next change is subtle, but I think the emphasis is also effective. Her land. What land? Her land. Connect this. Make this feel personal to the character. This note was the most important in my mind. It really required me to rethink my entire pitch. Initially, I was reluctant to mention all 4 characters, but I think due to the structure of my query letter, I have to. It doesn't make sense if I don't. So in this case, deep below and long forgotten, subterranean Tengu have developed an industrious and collective society, belying their devil-like appearance to those above. It doesn't specifically refer to a character. There is one in the manuscript who belongs to this group, but someone reading this doesn't know that. My friend didn't know that, so I have to clarify this. Who is this 3rd character? Who is that 4th character? I'll come back to that in a minute when I share my finalized query letter. Hold your horses. This final note is important for a different reason. Sometimes you have to fight for something you believe in. If you've seen my video on multi-POV pitches, you realize this structure is actually very effective and encouraged. So I pushed back on this note and stood by my choice. It can be a collaborative process. You're not beholden to follow every single note. Think about how they relate to the whole. Is it relevant or extraneous? Here's my latest query letter in all its glory. Thanks for all the help, Dave. I really appreciate it. Let's focus on the part that I said I'd return to. Promise kept.
Deep below and long forgotten, subterranean Tengu have developed an industrious and collective society, belying their devil-like appearance to those above.
After one is captured by Lord Osmond's forces, she finds herself in the care of unlikely hands and a friendship is forged. 2 more characters. I think that's a bit more clear. I also dropped that lead-in sentence, and that's barely scratching the surface. I thought the wordplay was fun, but it's a bit extraneous. But wait, there's more. I haven't really talked about my comps. The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless was a great read and a very apt comp for me. The setting is incredibly similar. The book even has a pronunciation guide for some of the names that are more obscure, which helped me with some I've included in my own book. I've already read the second book in Shauna's series and really love the blend of fantasy and historical fiction. The Daughter's War by Christopher Buehlman is not a debut, it's the second book by him, but it is recent and shares some sensibilities with my book, which makes it an apt comp as well. It also was successful, which I think is important in terms of the marketing side of things. See, I'm catching on. It just takes a little bit. Call now, because this deal's getting even better. I have a new summary as well. This I envisioned as more of the back of the book, something to entice a reader. Bones, the flight patterns of birds, entrails. There are many mediums for divination, yet no matter which is used, a woods witch named Lady Galder foresees the same future. the destruction of the natural world. Much of this reads like the plot and character portions of my query letter, so I'm not going to narrate everything. The end teases some of the bigger picture themes of my book, however. As the Woods Witch and her allies fight for peace, a deeper secret begins to emerge, forcing long-held assumptions to be questioned. Once the land was whole, and great evils were sealed away, now that same darkness threatens to keep Galiland fragmented. Ooh. Next, let's take a dive into author bios. Many of the articles I found, like this one from Natalie, are focused on what you should include in your query letter. She points out that ideally, it's a brief summary of your writing credentials. Natalie emphasizes that your query letter bio should establish any writing credentials, including publications, awards, courses, workshops, or other achievements that show literary merit. Show that you are the best person to write this specific book. Be clear, concise, polite, but most of all, a professional summary of who you are as a writer. Show that you are a professional person, a decent human, and not a psychopath. Thanks, Natalie. That one's hard to remember when you have no empathy or compassion for other people. Remember, your query letter has a single purpose: to get a literary agent to want to read your manuscript. Your query letter bio is just one part of that, but it's an important part that you should always try to include, even if you think you have nothing to say about yourself as a writer. Believe me, you do. However, if you really can't think of anything meaningful to say, then leave it out. I think I walk that line pretty well. The details I've included are relevant and show an agent that there's some qualities I have that did help in writing my book. What does Natalie think should not be in your query bio? It should not be a potted history of your life, reveal your age or marital status, the number of children you have now or in the future, or mention a writing prize you won when you were in 4th grade, or the fact that your mother thinks you're a wonderful writer. These are not achievements worthy of a query letter bio, and please God, do not talk about your cats. Do not boast. You want to share your accomplishments without sounding like an insufferably vain person. Equally, please set your insecurities aside. Don't apologize for taking up too much time or disturbing them with your query letter. Don't diminish yourself. I think that's great advice from Natalie. This next article from the Query 101 blog reiterates similar points. Some key things this article recommends mentioning are having a book blog, having a writing-focused Twitter account, having won an essay contest, having written for the school or local newspaper, having published an academic article, etc. This article also mentions not to give a long-winded account of your entire life, and also not to mention your cats. But they're so cute. I thought this portion was very insightful. They want to read something that is short, relevant, and to the point. But we do want to make sure that we imbue the author bio with a little bit of personality. I suggest one line at the end of the bio that hints at your uniqueness and personality. So pick one thing, a unique hobby, interest, talent, etc., and close out your bio with one short and sweet sentence. Confusingly, the example given in this article does talk about cats. When I'm not writing, I enjoy knitting, doing yoga, and being a full-time servant to my 2 cats. What's the deal? Make up your mind. Can we talk about them or not? Poor kitties. Both of those articles were specifically about query letter bios. So where can we look for inspiration for an author bio blurb? If you watched last video's comp tutorial, you might have had the same eureka moment that I did. Those new voice showcases include bios. Let's take a look at those. Alexander Darwin is a 2nd-generation Vietnamese Jewish-American author living in Boston with his wife and 3 daughters. Outside of writing, he teaches and trains martial arts. He's inspired by old-school Hong Kong action flicks, JRPGs, underdog stories, and bibimbap bowls. I'd love to meet this guy sometime. We have some shared interests. I think this is a very effective bio. While I haven't read his book, it seems like the martial arts are very relevant to the story. Here's another one. Sharon was born in Sweden to American parents and grew up in Wisconsin near Lake Michigan. She has been a writer all her life from the time she scribbled words and pictures on pieces of paper, stapled them together, and called it a book. Her love of stories later translated into an English degree, and then she went on to get her MA and PhD in medieval and early modern literature. And because she collects degrees the way some people collect stamps or baseball cards, she graduated with her creative writing MFA in fiction in 2021. She is an associate professor of Shakespeare and medieval literature in beautiful Alaska, where she lives with Juno, the derpiest Siberian husky ever. This one focuses more on her credentials, specific education that ties into writing, and suggests that she might be a capable author. Some relevant credentials, but also has fun with it. Here's a final example. Eliza is a Scottish-born Chinese diaspora author who writes about East Asian mythology, British folklore, and mad women in the attic, but preferably all 3 at once. Eliza's work has been published in The Dark, Podcastle, Fantasy Magazine, and The Best of British Fantasy 2019. Fathom Folk is her first novel. Like with Alexander, this bio emphasizes a unique identity, which is definitely intriguing. But if you're like me, talking about mayonnaise on white bread, it's not as compelling. I need to go a different route. Looking through these, I found essentially 3 templates, being silly and quirky, highlighting life experiences and identity, or showcasing writing credentials, publication history, or your social media platform. So how did I apply those lessons in writing my own author bio? Despite looking like vanilla ice cream in a styrofoam cup, I have a bit of an interesting upbringing. W.P. Ogilvy is French-born, but was raised in New York City by Californian parents. Emphasizing the intersection of those 3 very disparate worlds could be compelling. Maybe an agent would see that and be like, huh, that sounds like someone I'd like to talk to. While attending St. Anne's High School, he began interning and assistant engineering in recording studios. My school was pretty shishi, full of famous people, children of famous people. Might as well name drop a little bit. The interning and recording studios showcases another side of me. I started that when I was 15. Much like with my first sentence, emphasizing duality, I think shows some range. College brought him out west to USC in Los Angeles, where he still lives. He works in film sound and has collaborated with mixed media artists, including Talo Madani, on pieces that have been shown at MoCA and MoMA. For decades, he has told stories through audio or lyrics, and now is focused on putting them to page. That, I think, ties everything back together. Why should you take my writing seriously when most of my life has been spent doing these other things? I'm trying to connect the dots. So what do you think of this bio? I might tweak it some more, but I'm fairly happy where it currently stands. I could maybe make it a bit quirkier. Look at the time fly. That's all I have for this video. See you next time. I'm going to start submitting to agents, and I'll keep you updated.